What's going on, everybody? How you doing? In today's video, this is a donation request. This is for Cameron. This is Chad Smith talking about Neil Peart. What is it? A tribute to Neil Peart by Chad Smith from the Drum Channel. Wow, amazing Drum Channel. Okay, so Cameron says, hey dude, I don't know if anyone's requested this yet, but I think it'd be cool to do, especially now that you've watched Beyond the Lighted Stage. There's a point where Tim Comerford from Rage Against the Machine talks about meeting Neil and kind of getting the cold shoulder, which if you also saw in that video, our buddy Gregg Russell in the comments was in the room when that happened, when that incident happened. And just go back and look at that comment. He'll, basically there were other people in the room. Tim came in, nobody introduced him to Neil, and Neil probably didn't know who he was, right? And it kind of was just weird, and Neil was like, what are you doing in my room? Who the hell are you? Get out of here, kind of thing, I imagine. So anyways, go to Gregg Russell's comment. There's more there. This is a video of Chad Smith from Red Hot Chili Peppers telling stories about Neil, including meeting him, where it's the complete opposite. Yeah, actually, I think Gregg Russell said Chad was in the room. Some pretty cool stuff here, and I think it's worth it. Chad's a decent storyteller too, so that makes it interesting in my opinion anyways. All right. Cool, yeah, absolutely. So we're going to check this out. Drum Channel. Shout out the Drum Channel. Don Lombardi. Super great people over at the Drum Channel. Drummers. I love drummers. They're just freaking the best. If I could have done videos for drummers, like with drummers at the Drum Channel all day, that'd be amazing. I mean, as a bass player. It's fantastic. I love drummers. All right, so, oh, hey, hang on. Before that, for the month of July, if you have not seen yet, I'm doing 6 songs, 6 song requests for $100 for July. So if you got some requests, if you got a list going, if there's some stuff you want me to check out, watch, listen to, talk about, hit me direct. PayPal, Cash App, Venmo. In the notes section, leave a link, leave a description. Let me know what you want the videos to be on. I'll make the videos. You can also email me, jpanreedsemail@gmail.com. Thank you guys very much. All right, so here we go. Tribute to Neil Peart by Chad Smith. Let's do it. Bam.
Happy birthday, Neil. When I was about 14 years old, I was a sophomore in high school.
This guy looks like he's seen the sun forever.
I really loved playing drums, and I had played music and drums since I was 7.
Wow.
And sports and other things.
Look at this
guy. By the time I was a sophomore in high school.
Hockey. Where's he from? Wait a minute. Did he say where he's from and I missed it?
If not all, I would say 80% of my sophomore year in Andover High School outside of Detroit, Michigan.
Oh, okay.
In the parking lot listening to 2112. And that was pretty much my sophomore year. It was life-changing for me because up until that point, I had an older brother who listened to a lot of the English rock albums, and Led Zeppelin was probably my favorite, and John Bonham's drumming was so influential to me, along with a lot of others, but he was probably my favorite. And so if you think of how John Bonham plays and how Neil plays, they're two different, very distinct, unique, amazing drum styles, but very different.
Yeah.
So I was, Bonham trying to do all the triplets and make it feel like him. And then, lo and behold, I get turned on to Rush in 1976 or 77, and it just like changed my life. And Neil's drumming was so, just like the parts that he came up with and the way, his style, and it was so perfectly, it just fit the music so well, and it was so musical and so just like amazing technically, obviously, but just seemed so like nothing else. Those were the drum parts that were supposed to be in those songs. And I learned them all, and I would go down in my basement after I wouldn't go to school, and I would put the headphones on, and I'd listen to 2112 and play along with it. And I pretended, like I was in the band, and I changed my whole drum setup. I got 3 rototoms, and then 3 racks, the splash, the cowbells, like a real poor man's version of Neil's kit at that time. And literally, it really changed my life. I could kind of hack my way through like his fills and his feels and everything, but I think that any drummer really worth his salt, any rock drummer, needs to have a Neil phase. You need to go through and immerse yourself in the drumming and the music of Rush and the drumming of Neil, and which there is so much, and we're so lucky to still have that today. You know, I went to a Rush concert in 1980, and
Good
it
year
was the
for
first
them.
concert at Joe
Okay.
Louis Arena. I remember that because I came out afterwards, and in the parking lot, our car wouldn't start, and it was in December, and we were stuck in the snow, and nobody to jump our car. So I do remember that very well. But again, like, just to see him perform and the way that he performed those songs, it was almost as if he was approaching it like a classical musician. Like, those parts were so well thought out and so well executed. And I've never seen more air drumming in an arena than you would at a Rush concert.
Right.
And it was just incredible. And I'm like seeing my hero for the first time, and it was again another life-changing thing. They were even better live. Right. It was incredible. And he had so much energy, much power, finesse. His drum set looked so fucking cool. I mean, everything about it was just like next level. I just floated on home. So fast forward,
car didn't start.
You know, I joined my little band years later in the late 80s
little band
with the Chili Peppers,
job,
and we're playing and doing our thing and sloshing around. And, you know, somehow I befriended Alex Lifeson, the guitar player. And we became friends, and
doesn't
one
want to
of the
get
funniest
into it.
people that I know, and an obviously amazing musician. And I tried to cool it with my fandom. I didn't want to, you know, tell him what a Rush nerd I am and was. And he's always been so gracious and so nice. And he said, "You got to come to one of our concerts and you be our guest." And so this is probably in the early 90s.
Wow.
And I said, "Is it possible that I could, you know, meet Neil?" He said, "Sure, I'll tell him. Yeah, of course. I'll introduce you to him." So I go, I'm all nervous, and I think it was at the Universal Amphitheater, and so I go and get my tickets, and there's passes, and you know, all the laminates and all that stuff, and I walk in, and somebody finds me from their group, you know, like a road manager person said, "Oh, Neil wants to see you." I'm like, okay. I'm like. And he's in his little dressing room on the side, and I think I was with Chris Stanke from Sabian, who's a good friend of his, and I go in, and I'm nervous, you know, and sometimes you don't want to meet your heroes kind of thing, but I open the door, "Hey, Chad," I didn't even know that he knew I existed on the planet. He's like, "Man, thank you so much for coming. Alex told me about you guys, and he's like, I love your music, and your drumming is really great." And like, sometimes people say that and they're like, yeah. But then he starts on the song and this groove and what were you doing, thinking what kind of drums, and like, he was legit. And I was like, oh my God. I'm like, I couldn't even be like, "Oh, but you have no idea," you know, I don't want to freak him out. But he was so kind and generous and thoughtful and like just humble. And I always took that away as like, here's someone who's like in the top 3 rock drummers of all time. And he's, you know, taking the time to like talk to this kid at the time-ish, and like just really, really like cool and nice. And he had this real dry sense of humor, and but he was really funny. I think a lot of people think, and I thought, like, when he's drumming, he's so serious, he never cracks a smile, you know?
Right, yeah.
And I'm thinking, man, this guy's like, this dude's serious cat. And when he's playing, he's all business, but he's funny, and like, he was just really warm, and it was great. And I was talking to him, and I think I may have mentioned the fact that like I was really, because what drummers do you like? And we talked about Stuart Copeland, I love him, and then I told him I was really into John Bonham, and then when I was in high school, I really got into Rush and your drumming, and I said, it's so different. And he goes, "Yeah, Bonham had that swing," and I go, "Yeah," and he goes, "I have the Canadian swing." And like, really, you know, was poking fun at himself or whatever. So
right.
That was the beginning. That's when I met him. And then, you know, years would go by, and I would see him whenever they would come in concert. And then one time they did a Buddy Rich thing. And it was in New York City, and we were rehearsing here. I'm at the drum channel in Oxnard, and Terry Bozzio was on it, and Neil was on it. Some other really great players and musicians were here, and we were rehearsing with the band. And it was a big band and orchestra and the whole thing. And it wasn't Buddy's band, but it was a band from here. Anyway, we're rehearsing, and I never played in front of Neil. So I was like, I'm sitting, and I'm out of my element playing like these Buddy Rich charts and songs, and like big band's not my thing. And I'm kind of just winging it, just holding on for dear life, hoping it's going to be okay. And so there's Terry and Neil and Don and some other people are sitting behind me, and I'm playing this Weather Report song and just going for it, like just really going for it as hard as I can, trying, knowing like I'm not looking over here, and I'm playing all my stuff. Song's over. Terry, who's always so supportive. That sounded amazing. You sound like Tony Williams, this and that. And the other thing, I'm like, oh, thank you, Terry, so much, so sweet. And Neil comes over to me, and he kind of looks around the drums, and he looks at me, and he goes, you think you could play a little bit harder? Which is so Neil, because I was bashing my brains out, which I normally do, but this was extra. So like, and he looked at me and kind of winked and laughed, and it was so fun, and he was so cool, and we had such a good time. And then, you know, I would fast forward to the last concert that Rush ever played, was at the Forum in Los Angeles. And I was there at the last night, and I'm there with Taylor Hawkins and Danny Carey and Stuart Copeland. We're all sitting in a row, and we're all air drumming, and it's a great, amazing show. Little did we know that was the last time that they would ever play. You know, and the same four guys were honored to be at his memorial as well. And Stuart got up and said a few things, and he said, at one point, he said, you know, I can't tell you on the count of my hand how many people have come up to me and said, hey, you're my second favorite drummer. And we all laughed and we all nodded, because Neil is Neil, and there's only one, and there'll never be another one. He's amazing. I love him. I love his family. They're just incredible people, and what a legacy. Yeah. God bless Neil Peart.
Peart.
When you're playing, you're expressing. Yes, you are. You're communicating. You're talking.
Yeah. Cool. There it is. All right, that was cool. Yeah. Okay, so you see, so we just talked about in a video, in one of the comments section videos, about how, you know, Neil's whole thing, the comment was something like, you know, Neil thought of it as a job, like a truck driver. You wouldn't go and get a truck driver's autograph kind of thing. And I had my whole rant spiel about it and my viewpoint on it. And then you hear Chad talking about it, and he's saying that, you know, here he is, he's having this experience with Neil, and Neil is so like open and this, that, and the other thing. But this is where things like, there's still a difference. I'm not saying that Neil can't be like that, but also there was like an in-between there. And you weren't just Chad Smith, you were Chad Smith of Red Hot Chili Peppers. Okay, fine, that's like in the early 90s, but still, you know, you've been in Los Angeles and doing your thing in Los Angeles, which is where this is happening, right? So you're in the circle, right? For the 80s, you're breaking into it, you're doing your albums, you already did an album with George Clinton, and et cetera, you know, all that kind of thing. So you're not nobody, but I'm still saying it's different. And, you know, you're in the drum circle, right? You're going in with a representative from Sabian that you probably know, that you're in contact with. You're probably sponsored by Sabian, et cetera, whatever. You're working on it. It's, you know, a developmental deal, whatever, you know, it's different than, and that's how you're able to go and meet Neil. As opposed to, so basically what that is saying is that if you want to meet Neil, you need to be, well, I mean, this is back then, obviously not anymore, but you need to know somebody and be somebody to some extent, like in that kind of way. As opposed to if you pay for the VIP ticket, you're not meeting Neil. That's why I say what I say. Just another example. Because I know I'm going to get some of that, because you hear this story and it sounds all like, and I know you see interviews of Neil and he's just comes off as super nice, a down-to-earth guy, but also really smart and well-read and thoughtful and right, all of those kinds of things. But then like that whole thing with the fans, I just kind of like, I have to poke it. I have to, you know, say something about that because I notice it. I can't be the only one that notices it. I just think it's kind of interesting. That's all. You know, it's ancient history at this point. But, and again, not to take anything away from the guy in terms of his work and any of that at all. Doesn't have to do with that. Right? So, yeah, this is cool hearing Chad Smith's stories of Neil Peart, and, you know, also saying that, you know, where Tim Comerford came in, right? Because part of this had to do with the whole thing on Beyond the Lighted Stage. Tim Comerford talking about his whole thing. Maybe if Tim Comerford, it sounds like from what Greg Russell was saying, that Tim Comerford just kind of came in. Maybe he was let in. He probably was let in or something. But nobody introduced him. It wasn't like, and he didn't know who he was. You know, there was no introduction. Especially for things like this, that kind of helps. You know, like that kind of helps. I mean, unless you go in, I don't know what happened with Tim, if he maybe went in and was like, hey, I'm Tim, and introduced himself. You know, I'm Tim Comerford, bass player for Rage Against the Machine, Audio Slave. Thank you very, you know, it's that, you know, just like, thank you very much. I'm so happy to be here. Thank you for, et cetera, you know, playing that game, doing that thing, being nice and gracious and all of that, right? I don't know what exactly happened. Certainly it'd be easier if, you know, Chad Smith saw him, or Taylor Hawkins saw him and was like, oh, hey, Neil, have you met Tim? That's different. You know, hey, have you met Tim? This is, oh, hi, you know, because then there's a qualifier there, as opposed to just, who is this guy? Who is this guy? How'd he get a pass? He should be in Alex's room. Or something. You know, like, get this guy in Alex's room. Get him out of here. Yeah. Anyways, it's like the Cool People's Club, not the Cool People's Club. You're not in the Cool People's Club. Don't care that you paid however many hundreds of dollars to go to the VIP, not going down there. Anyways, still a nice guy, still super smart, still incredible drummer. Chad's a decent storyteller. Yeah, okay. Yeah, decent. All right, that's fine. That's fair. for Chad, that guy, again, he looks like he's just like seen the sun forever. He really looks just sunbeat. Just really just like, oh man, sunbeat. I guess I shouldn't talk. I'm going to have that look in no time out here. In no time. I'm going to have that look in no time. Oh boy. Especially with all the fishing I do. Shit. Anyways, all the outside time. I don't care what time of day it is. Anyways, cool. Very cool video. Thank you guys for watching. I'll catch you in the next video.